I think all this stuff about a threat to democracy, I think the real threat to democracy is the progressive movement and the Biden administration.
The Biden administration?
Ooh. Now that's tea. That's some tea that gotta be clocked. CNN Caitlin Collins does a sit-down interview with Bill Barr. He is the former Attorney General for former President Donald Trump. If you know, you know. They did an exclusive interview. We're going to watch a tad bit snippet of it. Bill Barr and Donald Trump has been very controversial in the past. They, used to beef or whatever. Donald Trump has called him out of his name a few times. They were not on the best of terms, but in this interview, Bill Barr speaks about how he is still currently endorsing Donald Trump. We're going to get into it, and we're going to see what's tea. It's like, this man didn't call you out your name, and you're still endorsing him. And it's crazy because the same thing happened with Ted Cruz. He talked about Ted Cruz's wife at a point in time, and then Ted Cruz still was Team Donald Trump. That I don't understand. But let's go ahead and get started.
Time you and I spoke, when we had you on the show, you told me that you would jump off the bridge when it came to it on who you were going to support in the 2024 election. It appears that you have jumped off that bridge because you said recently you were going to vote for the Republican ticket come November, which means you're going to vote for Donald Trump.
I said that's what I plan to do at this stage.
You're saying you could change your mind, maybe?
Well, I'm not going to vote for Biden, this is a wild time. Who knows what's going to happen in 7 months? But I expect, as between Trump and Biden, there's no question in my mind.
Oh, so you're kind of suggesting that maybe Donald Trump may not be the Republican nominee?
Or Biden may not be the Democrat.
So you would vote for another Democrat if a different Democrat was on the ticket?
It's hard to imagine that this party, the Progressive Democratic Party, would nominate someone I would support.
Yeah, I know you disagree with him, but I have to ask you about something that Trump posted about you this week because he responded in response to you saying you'd vote for the Republican ticket.
Caitlin's hair is so
former
pretty.
AG Bill Barr, who let a lot of great people down by not investigating voter fraud.
Okay, while former AG Bill Barr, who let a lot of great people down by not investigating voter fraud in our country, has just endorsed me for president despite the fact that I called him weak, slow-moving, lethargic, gutless, and lazy. Yikes. Based on the fact that I greatly appreciate his wholehearted endorsement, I am removing the word lethargic from my statement. Thank you, Bill. MAGA 2024. This is crazy. This is actually wild. Look, I understand some of y'all are Donald Trump supporters, but at some certain point, you have to hold that man accountable. President aside, in regards to just being a decent human being, why are you talking to people like this? Why are you describing him as weak and slow moving and gutless and saying you're going to remove the lethargic from your statement? And then to fast forward or rewind, Bill Barr, the fact that he says something that really clicked in my head that a lot of people do on the left and the right, this automatic mentality of, oh, okay, I'm just going to vote for the ticket. Because people on the left, they'll say vote blue no matter who. And then people on the right, they'll say, okay, they're supporting the Republican ticket regardless. I feel like that just does not do well for us. Even with me, the whole concept of just voting blue no matter who, that never sat well with me. I am not just going to vote for you because you're a Democrat. I really feel like we got to really stop highlighting the party and look at the policy. Hence, obviously, he probably does align more with the Republican policies, but just don't label it as, oh, I'm voting for whoever the Republican ticket is. Just label it as I'm voting for whoever aligns best with the policies that I think can move this country forward. Because I feel like it's all about our wording. Some people may think, oh, I'm deeping it or maybe going a little bit too deep. But it's no, really not. But let's continue.
In our country has just endorsed me for president despite the fact that I called him weak, slow-moving, lethargic, gutless, and lazy. Based on the fact that I greatly appreciate his wholehearted endorsement, I am removing the word lethargic from my statement. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah. It's classic Trump. What's the question?
And he's just laughing.
What's your response?
Well, obviously, what I said was that I'm very disappointed that this country is stuck with this choice between two people who I don't think either of them should be president of the United States. But given that binary choice, I feel I have to choose Trump.
But he's mocking you.
So it's not about me. I think that I've said this all along. If faced with a choice between two people, neither of which I think should be president, I feel it's my duty to pick the person who I think would do the least damage to the country. And I think Trump would do less damage than Biden. And I think all this stuff about a threat to democracy, I think the real threat to democracy is the progressive movement and the Biden administration.
The Biden administration?
Ooh. Now that's tea. That's some tea that got to be clocked. He said the real threat to democracy is really the progressive movement and the Biden administration. Clock that. I'm not going to lie. Both parties have, I don't even like using the word, like the phrase threat to democracy too loosely. But if we're going down that path, both parties have those components to it. Progressives and not necessarily, I wouldn't say not necessarily the left. I would say more so progressives, and I wouldn't say necessarily the right, more so the radical rights. Both of them, both ends of the spectrum have those components of where you can be like, okay, that's a threat to democracy.
Or President Biden himself?
Biden's support for the progressive agenda.
I think a lot of people hear that, and the case that we just talked about that went before the Supreme Court essentially, and say, how can you see that and say that Biden is a greater threat to democracy?
Where are we losing our freedoms? How are our freedoms being constrained? They're being constrained by the progressive government. And, democracy, especially, from the Anglosphere democracies, the Five Eyes and so forth, the threat's never been for autocratic government on the right.
But how specifically is Biden threatening democracy?
The threat to freedom and democracy has always been on the left. It's the collectivist, socialist agenda. And that is where we're losing our freedom. Parents are losing the freedom to control their children's education. People can't speak their mind without losing their jobs and things like that.
That part, I agree. The not being able to speak your mind. I just don't believe in the whole doxing or the whole cancel culture. But I will say it started within the progressive party, like the cancel culture. But I feel like people on the right are picking up on it as well, specifically with the whole situation that's happening within Palestine and Israel. And if you ask certain questions, or if they feel like you're insinuating certain things, like, okay, you're canceled type of vibe. So it's just like, it goes on both ends of the aisle.
Where's that coming from? It's not coming from the right.
Those two things that you just noted there, you believe are worse than a president of the United States trying to subvert the will of the people by overturning the results of the election?
I think a country, all the things together, like we're not enforcing our borders. We have open borders. We have lawlessness in our cities. We have regulations coming fast and furious, so telling people what kind of stoves they can use and what kinds of cars they have to drive, and eliminating cars and so forth.
I didn't even think of that.
Those are the
like
threats
the
to
EVs
democracy.
But President Biden is not in control of what some school boards across the country are doing.
He's using the
you can make that
administrative
argument, but how is that the same thing?
Major changes are being made in our country.
That is true. I will say President Biden is far from innocent, but I do think a lot of people use him as a scapegoat the same way that they use Trump. There's a lot of things that are happening locally there's a lot of things that happen that's within local power to where people are just blaming it on the executive branch. They're blaming it on Biden. Oh, Biden is this, Biden is that, which I understand, because it's like when you're the face of the country, you're going to get the slack, whether it's good or whether it's bad. And I saw that within the Trump's administration. I'm still seeing it now within the Trump's administration. It's like everyone blames every single thing on Trump that doesn't necessarily correlate to Trump. So it's like, yeah, I just wish that people can see it from both. Like, it's funny how someone on the left can see it when the right does it, and someone on the right can see it when the left does it, but they don't see it when they do it within themselves. I just really want us to get to the point where we actually take a step back and we look in the mirror and be like, okay, I'm pointing fingers, but my house isn't clean.
without the democratic process, and they're being made by bureaucrats in these agencies.
Okay, pause. You cannot argue that Republicans across the country are not doing that as well. In my own hometown, there's a huge fight at the library over which books kids can read. This is not something that is a single party fight.
Do you think don't you think there should be some limits on what people are able to read at very young ages?
I just think people look at what you're saying and they don't. And maybe even Republicans who have concerns about what's happening with school boards or the culture and don't maybe abortion even don't equate that with January 6th and Trump's efforts. When you told him the election was not stolen, and he still went out there and said it was stolen and led a lot of people to believe that. Those things aren't.
She has a point there.
It feels like a false equivalency.
She has a solid point there.
Well, I disagree. I think the country is much more susceptible to losing freedoms by the excesses of the left, and they have been steadily, and that's clear. People lose their jobs. Kids can't speak out in the classroom. They have to go along with what the professor says in order to get good grades and so forth. It's become like a Stepford nation being directed by the progressive elites.
Republicans are also trying to limit what could be said in the classroom.
Caitlin brought up a good point at the end. I wish she elaborated more on that because it does, I'm not going to lie, from outside looking in, it does not make sense to me for Bill Barr to endorse Trump, sort of say. Like, it's one thing to silently vote for him because you're like, okay, he's the best option, but to publicly endorse him after him publicly disrespecting you, I don't know how he can do that, but he did say it's not about him, it's about the people. So there's that. Let me know your thoughts on the comments down below. What do you think about this? Do you think it's weird that Barr is endorsing Trump? Even the way that Trump responded with that, not even tweet, I don't even know what it's called at this point. I would have been like, oh no, I'm pulling back that endorsement. But that's just me. Let me know your thoughts on the comments down below. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you're notified whenever I post a new video. Follow me on my social media. I love y'all all. God bless y'all. This is Udo at Connecting People with Policy. Toodles.